Hey, wrestling fans. Welcome to another episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic, episode 229 for Monday, December 28th, 2020. Thank you for tuning in, whether you're listening to the audio podcast or the live YouTube stream right now. And just gonna get right to it this episode. Unfortunately, have to talk about the sad news from this past weekend. The very unfortunate passing of Brodie Lee, also known as his time in WWE as Luke Harper, real name John Huber, unfortunately, tragically passed away this past Saturday, and only 41 years old. At the time, it's a lung issue, is what his wife posted about on her Instagram, and it's just very sad and unfortunate. Doesn't even really describe it enough. I was a big fan of Brodie Lee, and the first time I saw him, I don't remember what year it was actually, but it was on the Independence. And I want to say maybe like Prime Wrestling Ohio, maybe, where he was there a little bit, and Dragon Gate USA, Chikara, CZW. He had some time with Ring of Honor. And then, of course, when I first saw him on the Indies, he just stood out. Of course, his size, the long beard, very talented in the ring. And he was quite a character. And then when he was signed by WWE, spent some time in NXT, and then when they brought him on the main roster with the Wyatt family, Bray Wyatt and Eric Rowan, he was, honestly, I'm not just saying this but he was really, in my opinion anyway, the one who stood out the most. He was just so talented in the ring. And then, of course, when the Wyatt family split up, him and Rowan were the Bludgeon Brothers, and I think they weren't really given enough to be as good as they could have been. But of course, then Rowan got injured, and then WWE, for whatever reason, just really didn't use him. But I think he could have been a great single star. Could have put him in the main events. Could have been very successful, in my opinion. And then this past year in April, he was released, which he wanted his release. He actually wanted it sooner, but he was one of them that was injured, and then WWE added time to their contract. So he had to wait a little bit to get his release. And then when he did, of course, when the no-compete clause was over, he went to AEW and had the feud with Jon Moxley, main evented Double or Nothing. And they had a really good match in the main event for the AEW World title. And he beat Cody Rhodes for the TNT Championship. And his last match was in October, the dog collar match when Cody Rhodes won back the TNT Championship. And not only was he good in the ring, but he had a personality too. He was on Being the Elite. If you've seen it, the Dark Order has really stolen the show as of late on there. They're some of the best parts on BTE. If for some reason you don't watch BTE, I definitely recommend checking out this week's episode. It's on YouTube right now. It's a tribute to Brodie with all of the other Dark Order members, and we see some outtakes from BTE as well. I definitely recommend you checking that out if you have not seen it yet. And I'm sure on Dynamite this Wednesday we will see some kind of tribute. Definitely this Wednesday night. So you're gonna want to tune in for that on Dynamite. And Raw, I'm sure maybe a graphic at the beginning tonight. We might see Vince McMahon has acknowledged it, and on the WWE social media, Triple H, and of course all the wrestlers, WWE, AEW, doesn't matter what company they're in. What I've seen is nobody had a bad thing to say about John Huber as a person or him as a wrestler. Nobody had a bad thing to say. All good things to say about him. Very liked in the business. And like I said, I didn't know him personally, but I was a big fan of him as a pro wrestler. Definitely. He will be missed, and I'm sure all pro wrestling fans will miss him, and people that work in the business as well will miss him very much. And this episode is definitely dedicated to him, and condolences to his family, his wife, and his son. And like I said, I'm just glad that in AEW he had a really good run, which I think he deserved. And he didn't win the world title, but he had a great match with Jon Moxley. And then he did, like I mentioned, defeat Cody Rhodes for the TNT title. And he had a good run with that. And it's just very sad that I have to do an episode talking about something like this. It's not really something I want to talk about, but at such a young age, somebody passing, and unfortunately, that wasn't the only sad wrestling news over the weekend. Of course, legendary wrestler Danny Hodge passed away early Saturday morning, I believe, at 88 years old. Now, he was, I didn't get to watch him when he was active, obviously. He was before my time, but I have heard a lot about him. I've heard Jim Ross talk a lot about Danny Hodge on his podcast and on when he was on commentary, and definitely a legend in the wrestling business. And it's just very sad time for the world of pro wrestling right now. And that's all for today's episode, just a short one. Just wanted to do something special for Brodie Lee, aka Luke Harper, and the man John Huber. Hope to be back soon with more episodes of 360 Wrestling Fanatic. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. If you want to leave in the comments section your favorite Brodie Lee match or your favorite Luke Harper match, you can feel free. And thank you. And once again, I am Lance, and I am a wrestling fanatic.